everybody out there. Welcome to Work Life Leader Live. I'm Julie Cohen. I am the CEO of Work Life Leader, an executive coach, training and leadership development company. Also an executive coach who's been working in this field for over 20 years. You're watching Work Life Leader Live, which is a new endeavor of mine. And I have the honor to be on this platform talking about things that are really important to me: leadership development, career management, and the mix of work and life, work-life balance, work-life integration. All three of them to me are the magical components of a meaningful and effective and valuable career in life. So I'm looking forward to continuing Work Life Leader Live with you. Today's episode, you have just me. This is our fourth episode. The last three, I've had wonderful guests, and today you're getting just me. And the topic today is looking at someone I think is an icon of leadership and career management, and that's David Bowie. And I'm going to be talking to you about his career and examples of choices he's made and how that reflects leadership and effective career management. And I'm going to want to hear from you. Either examples of how you can relate to some of the choices and decisions he's made, or challenges you may have around leadership development and career management. And I'll look and see if I can pull some solutions and connections from David Bowie and his career. But before I get started on some of the content, if you're here and watching live, it is about 4:30 Eastern in the afternoon on Tuesday, September 8th. So if you're here watching live, please comment in the chat, hashtag live, and introduce yourself. And tell me, what's your favorite David Bowie song, if you have one? I'll be sharing mine in a minute. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So why am I doing this? Let me start with that. So we've been at home for 6 months because of the pandemic. One of the things that has enhanced my life is I've really ramped up my exercising. And so I've been walking probably for the last 2 or 3 months, 3 miles every morning. And when I started this, probably, a couple months ago, I decided I wanted to listen to David Bowie's entire discography, all of his albums in chronological order. I am a huge David Bowie fan, have been since I've probably been 15 or 16. But I never had the time to sit down and listen to his albums in order. And so I started doing that, and I did it over, it took about a month because he has a lot of albums, and I didn't even listen to any of his live albums, any of his classical music albums, his solo studio albums, as well as one studio album with another band that I'll talk about. And as I was listening, there was a lot of familiar stuff, and there was some things I was unfamiliar with. And I was actually blown away. Again, I'm a fan, but listening to the trajectory of his music, I was amazed by the variety, the quality, and knowing some of the history I know about David Bowie. I started seeing this man is a genius of how he managed his career, and he exhibits a lot of qualities of leadership that I want to share with you today. So that's today's podcast. So I'm going to, I'm going to share my favorite Bowie song with you now. But before I do, if you're here watching live, I can see we have some folks. Please say hello in the comment section. If you're watching live, use hashtag live. And share your favorite David Bowie song. Or if you're not a David Bowie fan, let me know who you're a fan of. Okay, so before we start talking about some of the nuts and bolts, I'm going to just share with you my one. I actually don't have a favorite. There's so much music of David Bowie I like, but I'm going to just give you a clip of one of my favorite David Bowie songs. Sit down, she burns to my life's bullet. Am I still too young? It takes a hand to bear. She takes a swim, takes his babies. It takes him minutes, takes him nowhere. Heaven knows you to take another thing. Cause I go back to once another American. All right. That is Young American by Young Americans by David Bowie. I'm just having a mini technical issue. All right. There we go. Okay, I'm back. So that was David Bowie, Young Americans, and it was actually from 1974. If you notice the clothing, you might see it's not this decade or any of the past decades. And he was on the Dick Cavett show in 1974. And again, one of my favorite songs. And just wanted to start with that. So I see we have some folks watching. Please share in the chat box that you're here. And Bill Hyman's here, and one of his favorite songs is Changes. Awesome, a great song. So I want to get started about a couple themes around Bowie and leadership. So one of the things that I find really powerful about Bowie is his brand, his professional brand, and how he really owned that brand. He designed it, I believe, very deliberately. And I'm going to share a video about that shortly. But he was someone who was known for his talent and what he did. And most of the choices he made throughout his career continue to support that brand of creative genius, cutting edge, innovation, willing to change things up, and not stuck in a rut. The reason why now how we make that personal is we look at what is your personal and professional brand. An effective leader is very aware of his or her strengths and plays to them. And again, I think Bowie did a fantastic job of doing that consistently over his career. And he would do that and be willing to fail also. And, and we're going to talk about that in a minute also, that he definitely had a lot of albums that weren't, breakthrough or commercial successes. So that's one item, personal brand. What is your personal brand? How do you develop it? How do you make choices that support that? How do you let others around you know about your personal and professional brand? And how are you consistent with that? So that's number one. Another item I think it's really important to talk about is starting. One thing that Bowie did, for those of you who don't know, he started his career in the 60s. His birth name is David Jones. And at the time, there was another famous musician, Davy Jones from the Monkees. Again, for those of you who are younger, you may not be aware of some of these folks, but so David Jones, who soon became David Bowie, decided that was going to really be confusing if he came out, started putting his music out. So he chose to change his name. And that there's a really important example of career management. He looked at what his skills were, what his brand was, and he looked at the environment around him and started thinking about, how can I make the most impact? How can I make a name for myself? And he needed to make some changes so he could be unique and stand out. So in the beginning of your career, that is another important point around career management. What choices are you making that enable you to stand out? So at the beginning of your career, and as you're building your leadership impact and capacity, you want to do well. You want to, do your job well, and whether you're working independently, working on a team, working in an organization, you want to produce results, and it's important to get noticed. So Bowie, as David Jones, would likely have not been as noticed because he would have been eclipsed by Davy Jones. So he changed his name and looked at how he could be different and be noticed. So that's another thing you want to think about. What can you be doing, regardless of where you are in your career, whether it's a project, your first job, or you have 20 or 30 years of experience? How are you continuing to get noticed by decision makers that you want to impact. As you grow as a leader, you also want to be very mindful of the people that you are supporting. How are you doing that to them? How are you helping them get noticed? That component of generative leadership is really important. So helping more junior leaders get noticed is also very important. So I just want to pause. I see we have another person watching, Bill McFarland, who is a blast from the past, who I know is also a Bowie fan. And I'm glad you're here, Bill. Share with us your favorite Bowie song. I just shared one of mine. And now we're going to keep going on looking at David Bowie, the intersection of leadership, career management, and how his career path represents really a fantastic career arc that was both deliberate and had really powerful results. So if you are watching, please put in the chat box your favorite David Bowie song. If David Bowie isn't your person, what artist, whether it's musician or another type of artist, career do you think represents really powerful leadership and career management? So I'd love to hear other folks, because there's lots more. David Bowie, again, happens to be a personal one of mine. So I want to share another example of something that I think is really important. And I'm going to share another video. So hold on a second. So this is a video that I'm going to be sharing of an interview that David Bowie did in 1983 with MTV. And he's very outspoken about some choices that MTV is making or made regarding what artists they're playing. So take a listen. We'll listen to it for about 30 seconds.
I'd like to ask you something. It occurred to me, having watched MTV over the last few months, that it's a solid enterprise, but it's got a lot going for it. I'm just floored by the fact that there's so few black artists featured on it. Why is that?
I think that we're trying to move in that direction. We want to play artists that seem to be doing music that fits into what we want to play for MTV. The company is thinking in terms of narrow casting.
That's evident. It's evident in the fact that the only few black artists that one does see are on about 2:30 in the morning to around 6. Very few are featured predominantly during the day. I'll say that over the last couple of weeks, this seems to be changing, but it's a slow process.
I know it's funny. I think people have different perceptions when you wind up watching. Let's say you watch an hour or two, even 3 a day.
Okay, so there we are back. We're back. If you didn't catch that video, the video I shared was from 1983, David Bowie speaking to what was called a VJ on MTV. So I don't even know if MTV is still around. Hey, anyone who's watching live or not live, is MTV still a thing? I have no idea. So when I was 14, that's when MTV launched, and I wanted MTV and my parents got it for me. So I can tell you I spent countless hours watching MTV in the early 80s. And in that video in 1983, David Bowie is challenging in an interview the artists that MTV is choosing to play, and he noticed that they were not playing black artists. And he called them out, and you could hear the VJ kind of stumbling and trying to say, no, that's not true. So the example there that I'm sharing around his career is he was not afraid to speak out and express his values and take a potentially unpopular stance, or take a stance about something that at the time may not have been, very much wasn't mainstream. Now we look back, now we look at today, what he's saying is what is finally coming to the forefront. But this was, almost 40 years ago, he was speaking about this. And I think it was a component of his values, as well as his using his platform to potentially shine a light on an issue that was important to him. So again, from a leadership standpoint, what do you notice? Here is someone who is using his brand, his strength, his platform to address issues that were relevant, and was willing to potentially risk repercussions, as well as potentially impact his business. MTV played a lot of David Bowie, and he was willing to kind of ruffle feathers to talk about something that's important to him. So how do we apply this to leadership today? Leaders need to be really clear on what their core values are. Ideally, you're working in an organization where those values are aligned. When they're not aligned, you can have a lot of dissonance and discomfort about, am I in the right place? But being able to act on your values and speak out when you see something that is in opposition to those values is a way that you can exhibit leadership. Exhibiting that type of behavior also shows people around you what you care about. And so that's also exhibiting authenticity, which is another extremely powerful characteristic of leaders who have impact. So curious, I see we have some more folks watching, want to hear a couple things. We're talking about David Bowie, who, as I'm calling, icon of leadership and career management. And we've addressed multiple topics of how he's exhibited leadership characteristics during his career. We talked about personal branding. We talked about values and acting upon your values, speaking out. We've talked about innovation. Curious how you see these as important characteristics in your own leadership. Other artists that you see that are making choices currently or in the past who really exhibit effective leadership and career management, please share in the chat box. And then also, if you want to challenge me on anything, I love and welcome questions and comments. So please send any questions and comments through the chat box. We're talking about David Bowie and his career and how it represents leadership and effective career management. So a couple other things now I want to go back to. So I mentioned earlier that I listened to Bowie's entire discography. The first album I started with was his 1967 release, which was just called David Bowie. And I got to tell you, it was hard to listen to. I listened to the whole thing. And for those of you who are watching who know me, I am a diehard Bowie fan. And I don't know if I ever listened to that album from beginning to end or even ever, and it was painful. It's amazing to me that after that album, he went on to the career that he did, because if I would have heard that, I would have never listened to David Bowie again. So I was trying to find his thoughts on that, and I couldn't find an interview with him commenting about what his take was on his first album. But one interview I did find was that his initial career, he thought he was going to be writing for the West End in London, writing show tunes, writing musicals and plays, and that other people would be singing his songs. And that, when I just heard that actually aligned more with what this first album was, because the music sounded somewhat like some show tune combination, like early 60s, like beginning rock and roll. So it was not good in my eyes. So with that, you can have like a not great phase of your career, and I'm going to actually talk more about that. I think there's other phases of David Bowie's career that were not commercially successful and also weren't a popular success. Sometimes they were together and sometimes they were separate. And he continued on. He was true to kind of his mission, and there was a lot of resilience there. And we can look back at his career. There was a lot of resilience in a lot of ways, besides from some of his creative endeavors. He struggled, with drug addiction, and he, overcame that, as well as other PR situations that impacted his career at different phases. So the issue of not letting one bad decision, bad choice, unsuccessful project, unsuccessful entry on your resume, not letting that impact your whole career is really important. And remembering that you are way more than one project, one action. So resilience is another really effective characteristic for effective leaders as well as effective professionals. So whether you're in a leadership role or not, building your resilience muscles will help you navigate your career effectively. So I want to pause. I'm seeing some new comments. As a reminder, if you're watching live right now, it is Tuesday, September 8th, almost 5 p.m. on the East Coast. So if you're watching this now, it's live. Please use hashtag live any comments you make. I'm Julie Cohen, the CEO of Work Life Leader, and we're talking about David Bowie as an icon of leadership and career management. Would love to hear in your comments the important characteristics you see as effective for leadership and a successful career. Let's see. So first of all, Janet Moran, thank you for affirming that MTV is still here. I will check it out because I'm really curious what's on there. I know in the 90s it moved much towards a lot more shows, less videos, and I think that's probably when I stopped watching it after that happened. So Bill McFarland, Life on Mars is one of his favorite songs. Awesome. So that's another thing. If you are a Bowie fan, let's hear what your favorite songs are. I'm gonna share another song in a minute. And Georgina Castro, thank you. Neil Young, Roger Waters, both artists that also do this in regards to speaking on issues that bring to the forefront. Yes, they are. And with some, I think with a lot of folks, some of their speaking can damage their career because some of their fans may not be happy with what they have to say, and they're willing to take risks. And so that's another really important characteristic. Are you willing to take risks? And can you evaluate the risks, the cost benefit of those risks? And sometimes you may or may not do it, or sometimes you might have to decide, this choice is more important, and I'm okay with the repercussion. So bad start. I want to go back to that 1967 again, in my opinion, and I welcome contrarian opinions about some of the music that I will share. Then David Bowie went on. His next album was also called David Bowie in 1969, but this is where Space Oddity came in, which really kind of, I think, rocketed him to fame. And then that was the beginning of his trajectory to international fame. After that was The Man Who Sold the World. I meant to show a picture of that. I don't have the album here. It's in my other room. But that's the album in which he's wearing a dress. And so this was a time where he was trying to shake things up, keep people guessing about him, his sexuality. Yeah, at the time in the late 60s, early 70s, these things were not so common. And there was a lot of controversy around who he was, people wondering. And so to me, there is another fantastic, important characteristic around leadership. Keep people wondering about who you are and the skills and talents that you have. Yes, shine all of that you do well. And it's great that you can surprise people and continue to do that and show how that your impact doesn't end in just one area. Then Bowie goes on to Hunky Dory, Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, which for a lot of people, let's see, do I have it here? I grabbed some. Oh, no, I didn't grab that. No, so I'll show you some album covers in a bit. Continues through Aladdin Sane. And then his next album, this is one I want to bring up. It's called Pinups, 1973. So I have this album, and I didn't know, when I listened to the discography, I wasn't sure if I ever listened to it end to end, and I didn't, and it's phenomenal. And it's all covers. So Bowie went and sang songs of others and made them his own. And so Georgina, you talk about Roger Waters. He sang some songs, some Pink Floyd songs, and The Who, I Can't Explain, Here Comes the Night. Oh my goodness, I can't. Yeah, so he sang a lot of amazing songs, and he made them his own. And so to me, this is a kind of an undiscovered strength of Bowie that I don't think a lot of people know about. And again, that's another component of really be aware of what your undiscovered strengths are, and how you understand what your undiscovered strengths are is you often have to seek feedback. I think a lot of us are very good at knowing our strengths and playing to them, and sometimes there's things that people see in us that we don't. So it's really important to have mentors, to get feedback from people around you who can tell you, hey, you're really good at this. So seek that out. If you're a more senior leader, you are most likely able to get a 360-degree feedback assessment where you can find out about your undiscovered strengths. If you're a more junior leader or a more junior professional, that often isn't made available to you. And I would challenge you to seek out opportunities to get that kind of 360-degree feedback from people around you. So I'm going to pause for a minute. We're talking about David Bowie and his career and how it reflects phenomenal career management and leadership skills. So I want to pause to see if anyone has questions, comments about David Bowie as a leader. Do you buy what I'm saying? Do you think I'm, full of it? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know other musicians or artists that you think are doing great work and exhibiting leadership. And any questions, if you have just general questions about leadership development and career management, I'm happy to answer them and potentially relate them back to Bowie. So now I'm going to say something kind of controversial. I'm coming out of the closet. So if you're watching this and you're a Bowie fan, I'm ready to be reamed. So Bill McFarland, if you're still there, I want to hear your thoughts. So this is an album of Bowie's. It's called Low. And it was, let me see what year, 1977. So this was the first of 3 albums that were called his Berlin trilogy. He was in Berlin, and I can't remember if he was recovering from his drug addiction or it was the height of his drug addiction post-past. It was around that period. I think he might have been coming out of that. But so he did 3 albums, Low being the first, Heroes being the second. And I think I brought all these out because they're really good. Heroes. So this is one of my favorite albums. And then the third was Lodger. Did I bring Lodger? No, I didn't. So my blaspheme, my David Bowie blaspheme is, I think this is overrated. And I would say most David Bowie fans that I know, they will kind of pillory me about this because this is kind of seen as him being completely avant-garde, ahead of his time, experimenting with all sorts of new type of music, ahead of his time, all which may be very true. But I hadn't listened to this in a while, and I think I never listened to it end to end because probably when I was 17, 18, and first time finally hearing this, I couldn't get through it. There's a couple songs I like, so that's me coming out of the closet that I think this is overrated and not my favorite album. And the reason I say this is that depending on who you're working with and who your audience is, something that you think is great, other people may not see you that way, as well as vice versa. Something you do that everyone else thinks is great, you may not think it turned out as well. And both of those are really important from a leadership standpoint for you to understand. So you're going to do things that you think are awesome, and they're not going to get the results that you want, or the kudos that you want, or the impact that you want. And it's important that you figure out how to best deal with them and how to navigate through that. And then on the flip side, there might be things that you've done really well that other people may not find as great as you'd hope. So this is kind of my kind of leadership disconnect with him. in that everyone felt this was super and doesn't do anything for me. Fortunately, that's why there's Vanilla and Chocolate. This is probably one of the few albums that it's like, yeah, I'll keep it on the shelf and listen to the songs I like. I don't really listen to my albums anymore, but there you have it. So would love to hear if any Bowie fans are watching this, you can kind of call me blasphemous, or I'd love your thoughts. Are there any albums of Bowie's that you don't like? Or if you look at other artists that you follow, are there any musicians that, you know, their music, an album or some phase of their career disappointed you? And how did that make you feel about their career? So we're talking about David Bowie, icon of leadership and career management. Would love to get your thoughts, comments, questions. If you're watching live, please put in the comments. If you're watching this recorded, so not on Tuesday, September 8th at around 5 p.m. Eastern, please put comments also. Please respond. I check the comments back regularly and will respond to anything that you comment on later. So I see, Bill, you have a great comment. If David Bowie were alive today, what would you think he would say is the most important leadership attribute? Interesting. Let me think about that. In the meantime, I'm going to share a minute video of him talking about his career. So let's see. We're going to add this. This is an interview he did. Let me see what year. In 1999 with a British journalist. I think he's a journalist. He might just be a TV interviewer. His name is Jeremy Paxman. So take a listen.
I was thinking back over your career, and it seems to me that there's been a constant reinvention of sorts. Yeah. Why did you do that?
I think I was quite happy to buy into the idea of reinvention up until the beginning of the 80s, really. And it came about, I think, more than anything else, that when I was a teenager, I had it in my mind that I would be a creator of musicals. I sincerely wanted to write musicals for the West End and for Broadway, whatever. I didn't see much further than that. As a writer, and I really had the idea in my head that people would do my songs. And I was not a natural performer. I didn't feel at ease on stage, ever. And I had created this one character, Ziggy Stardust, that it seemed that I would be the one that would play him because nobody else was doing my songs, and the chances of my actually getting a musical mounted were very slim. And so I became Ziggy Stardust for that period. And things sort of led. I liked the idea, and I felt really comfortable going on stage as somebody else. And it seemed a rational decision to keep on doing that. And so I got quite besotted with the idea of just creating character after character. And I think probably there must have been a point in the late 70s, I know there was, where I felt that the characters were in fact getting in the way of myself as a writer, and I endeavoured to kind of kill them off and start writing for me as just a singer-songwriter.
Okay, so I referred to some of that content a little earlier. So so in this interview, Bowie talks about creating different personas because what he wanted to do, it wasn't happening. So he created what he wanted to see. So to me, this really highlights a couple things. His innovation, and he's been innovative throughout his career, not just in the 70s. Innovation followed him, until he died in 2016. But so that to me is, again, another important trait to look at. If what you want to do, and this really falls, I think, in both career management and the leadership buckets. If what you want to do is not available to you, look at how you can create it yourself. He talked about that, and then at a certain point, he decided to change, and it stopped serving him, and so he stopped doing it. And that is another really important career management concept, is be aware of the trajectory you're on. If what you're doing is moving you towards where you want to go, keep doing it. If not, you need to pause, assess, and redesign what you want to do next. What happens for many of us as our life progresses and new parts of our lives evolve, new things become important, other things become less important. We sometimes continue our career or our leadership trajectory not paying attention to what's different to us. So to me, Bowie, after watching this video, I think this really highlights that paying attention to both what you're getting out of your work as well as the impact your work is having, and then adapting to that is really important. So I want to pause. Bill, I know I didn't answer your question, but I will actually say a couple things that I think that Bowie might attribute to the most important leadership skill. And I would say it would be adaptability. He was often, in his later career, he wasn't called this, but early in his career, he was often called the chameleon, of rock and roll, because every year or two, he really changed his image. And so I think that ability to adapt I would say is probably one of his most important leadership attributes. So what do you think, Bill, or anyone else watching? What do you think is Bowie's most important leadership skills? I'd love to hear your comments, thoughts, questions. We've got a couple more things I want to share before we wrap up. So let's see if there's one more. Oh, I have a couple more videos, really short, but they're kind of fun. So another thing that I think is really across his career that you see is his ability to collaborate. So I'm going to show you two short collaboration videos. One that I think is renowned and kind of one of his most famous collaborations. So let me add this to the stream. Hold on a second, and hopefully you'll enjoy this. Here we go. Okay, so that was the first collaboration. For those of you who don't know, that was David Bowie and Queen doing Under Pressure. And just for full disclosure, that is actually a mix video. I could not find, and I don't even know if it exists, I could not find a performance of Bowie and Queen together. I don't know if it exists actually live on video. So that is a compilation of them different times, but put together. So that is like one of, again, an iconic song of Bowie collaborating, sharing the stage with an equal icon, but sharing the stage next to him. Here's another one, another sharing of the stage, a song that is a collaboration of two icons. But in all candidness, looking back on this, it sucks. Excuse my French, fellow professionals. It did not age well. So I'm going to show you the first couple minutes of the first couple seconds of this collaboration, and let me know what you think. Okay, so that was David Bowie and Mick Jagger doing Dancing in the Streets. And I think that was 1993. I remember back then, I loved that song. And I was already in my early 20s, but I still was like, oh, that's so great. And now I look at that and I'm like, oh my God, what were they thinking? What were they doing they must have both been, I don't know, having a few drinks and decided to see what they could do. So with that, not all collaborations work. So this is the importance of collaboration as a leadership skill. Some collaborations are magical and last forever, and some not so much. So when you're looking for collaborative partners, you can't predict, but the value of collaboration really can expand impact, expand creativity, cause greater results. So that's just one other characteristic where I think we see Bowie as a master collaborator. He has a history of collaboration. He has a history of being willing to bring young artists to the forefront. He has the history of collaborating with folks in his band, Tin Machine. That was I think it was 1989, and that album I didn't bring in. But Bowie decided to work with 3 musicians that he admired and started a band called Tin Machine that didn't have his name. It wasn't David Bowie in Tin Machine. He was one of the musicians, and he created a whole different kind of music. It was not like any kind of music he played before, and it was loud rock, and it was really good. I actually saw him. I saw Tin Machine at the Tower Theater in Philadelphia, and it was one of the loudest concerts I'd seen since I saw The Clash in the 80s in a college auditorium. So with that, his willingness to collaborate, his willingness to mentor others, all powerful leadership skills. So I see another comment. Again, any comments, questions about icons and artists and how they exhibit leadership? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And Kathleen Gillespie, I encourage you, listen to the discography, if not of Bowie, of another artist. My son is a Kanye West fan, and he and I are starting to listen to Kanye from beginning to end. And so I encourage you to it's fantastic to see someone's professional development, because we have technology and you can listen to music back to back. You can encapsulate a 40, 50-year career, over a month. I got to experience that. Georgina, thank you for the great comment. Very supportive of people being their actual self. Yeah. So this kind of gets back to their values and their authenticity. Really, those are the kind of leaders that people want to follow when you're not putting on, a facade. So although Bowie maybe wore a lot of costumes and had a lot of different personas, I think there was a lot of authenticity of who he was as a creative artist. So a couple other things I want to highlight before I wrap up about innovation. So Bowie did a couple other really innovative things that weren't happening at the time. So in 1997, he created Bowie bonds. He worked with an insurance company and investment banking entities, and he sold 10 years of his royalties up front to raise $55 million of cash for himself. And he basically sold shares in himself. And this wasn't done at the time, I don't believe. I think it's happened now more. But I remember when that was in the news, I remember my mother called me, "Have you heard about what David Bowie's doing?" And I didn't know about that because I wasn't paying attention to those things at the time. But that was cutting edge. He looked at his career not just as a musician. He interacted with all areas of industry. And so that was just one other example. And then I'm going to share a final video. And this is actually his last video. This was from his last album was Black Star, and it came out in 2016. And this was his last video. So we'll watch a couple minutes of it, a couple seconds, I mean. So here we go.
Look up here, I'm in heaven. I've got scars that can't be seen. I've got drama, can't be stolen. Everybody knows me now.
Okay, so that was just a few seconds of David Bowie's last video. The song was called Lazarus, and it was from his album Black Star, and it's haunting. So you can see him; he's aged. That was him at in his late 60s, and he was willing to be kind of who he was, and he knew he was dying when he released the album. And I believe he died like 2 or 3 days after the album came out. And, I'll share a personal story. I vividly remember I woke up, I'm in Philadelphia, I listened to WXPN, and my alarm always goes off to them. And I usually listen to the music news at the beginning when I get up, and it said David Bowie died. And I literally shot out of bed, woke my husband up, and started crying for a few hours. And I couldn't listen to the radio or any David Bowie music for about 3-4 weeks, or maybe longer. It could have been longer. And it took a couple of months until I kind of stopped my mourning. So he was someone I grew up with and followed his career for 40 years. And so therein lies to me another really important kind of of leadership, coming to terms with when your career is coming to an end, or when your leadership impact is no longer having the same impact. Obviously, he had a health issue, not the same, but I think what we can learn from the grace in which he ended his career and life. He did not let folks know that he had cancer and was, close to the end of his life. He left on his terms at some of his most creative. So if you haven't listened to Black Star, it's a fantastic album, very personal, very poignant. Georgina said his last video, I feel he was coming to terms with everything he had done and realizing that it was okay. He had not fulfilled or solved every problem, but he was okay with that. I'm with you, Georgina. You're giving me goosebumps. I can listen to his music now and not cry, and kind of really enjoy it. But again, I think he went out on his own terms, and I think that's a really powerful, again, a leadership characteristic. Whether you're leaving a company, ending a project, retiring. I don't even like to use the word retire anymore. Kind of starting the next phase of your life, whether it's a new career or just a re-engagement of how you spend your work and lifetime. Doing it on your own terms and highlighting your skills and your long career is a fantastic way to end. So I think this is a great way for me to end this Work Life Leader Live. I guess I kind of think of this for myself personally. I'll just share a little bit more about me. This is my love letter to David Bowie, to thank him for having such a powerful and meaningful influence on my life, and he continues to do so. I don't listen to him as much. I try to stay current and listen to some other artists, but whenever my mix comes on and Bowie's in it, it always makes my day. So thank you for letting me share this part of my life with you. Please share in the comments any other thoughts around David Bowie and other artists and examples of really powerful leadership and career management. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I will continually revisit the comments. So if you're not watching this live, please don't hesitate to comment. I will get back to you. Please join me again. We're continuing Work Life Leader Live. I'm aiming to live stream at least twice a week, talking about leadership, career management, career effectiveness, work-life balance, and the intersection of our personal and professional life, and how we continue to be impactful leaders while creating meaningful careers and impacting the world in a really powerful way. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.